Welcome to our aircon top-up instruction video. We're going to be showing you how to successfully top up your car's air conditioning using our range of products. Before we start, I'd just like to quickly point out a common mistake made by some clients, and it always relates to the attempted use of a non-aircon top-up branded hose with our aircon top-up branded can. Our thread is a 1/2 inch right-hand Acme coarse thread, and our aircon top-up hose is designed specifically to work and seal correctly with exactly that fitting. If you buy a non-branded hose, we can't guarantee that the result will be exactly perfect. The next issue is that clients sometimes attempt to screw the can on to the hose before they first retract the piercing barb by screwing the tap all the way anti-clockwise. If you try and do that, you'll prematurely pierce the can and lose the refrigerant. With that retracted, you can easily screw it on successfully. It is a simple system, you will have no problem, especially if you watch our video, but as usual, if you do have any questions or you're unsure, feel free to reach out on email, on phone, or on the marketplace messaging. The first thing we need to do is to establish which of the two refrigerant systems our vehicle is using. Refer to the underbonnet sticker, which is present on approximately 90% of cars. In this case, you can see that it's R134A, and that, in the rare occasion that the car was completely empty of refrigerant, it would need 580 grams to refill to full working condition. So, for this particular vehicle, we'd be using our blue R134A replacement product, and for reference, one can contains the equivalent of 453 grams of top-up. We'd also need our yellow recharging hose. This vehicle is a 2018 Land Rover, and we can see it's using the later R1234YF refrigerant and takes a maximum capacity of 1000 grams. For this, we'd use our purple R1234YF replacement product, and one can contains 456 grams of refrigerant. We'd also use the accompanying blue recharging hose.
The vast majority of cars have two charging points called the high side and the low side. Our system is specifically designed to only use the low side. To identify this is the low side, this is the high side. You'll notably see that the low side that we're interested in is on the fatter of the two metal pipes. If I were to remove both the caps, you'd also see a difference in size with the low side being smaller. Our hose will only fit the low side, so you cannot make a mistake.
Right, time to diagnose the vehicle. Safety first, gloves and super stylish glasses. And to our hose, we want to zero the gauge to make sure there's no residual pressure. So unscrew and then retighten the tap to the clockwise and making sure that it's secured. Connect up to the vehicle and take a reading. In this particular case, you can see that there is absolutely no pressure. That tells me this vehicle has no refrigerant whatsoever, and we will need to proceed to the step that's shown on the screen at the moment.
I'm now going to take a reading on this next car. So as with before, first thing I'm going to do is zero my gauge and tighten my tap back up. And to connect to the low side port, I've already taken the cap off. And you'll notice on here I've got a good healthy pressure, well above the blue. It's actually 50. That tells me that this system is holding pressure. My next step is to start the engine, put my air conditioning on with the fan on full on its coldest setting. So you'll notice that the gauge hasn't moved. In this position, I know that the system's holding pressure. However, because there's been no movement on the gauge, my compressor isn't working. This, unfortunately, is not something we can fix with our gas fans. We need to seek professional advice. However, we have managed to determine that it isn't a gas fault by using our hose as a diagnostic tool. And you'll also note I haven't had to pierce any of my cans and waste any of my product in doing so. In a scenario where the car has a 0 reading, that obviously indicates that there's no refrigerant in the system. We believe best practice is to start with our stop leak. This will put enough refrigerant in the system to start the compressor, and also has the magic O-ring sealer to hopefully cure the leak. The first step is to remove the pin from inside the chamber. Simply unwind the tap and you'll see obviously that the pin disappears. And we do this because we don't want to pierce the can until we're ready. Next, attach the can, simply screw it on till it's nice and tight, and then simply attach to the low side port as we described earlier. The next step is to start your car. We want to have the engine on, obviously, the fan on full, the air conditioning on, and the coldest setting possible. The next step is to pierce the can. Very simple, we're just going to screw the tap right down. Once it's pierced, we now need to invert the can, and I'm going to slowly unwind the tap. You'll notice that the needle of the gauge may shoot right round to the red. Don't worry, that's perfectly normal. At this stage, if you could see, hear or smell the refrigerant, it indicates a major leak, in which case we would suggest to shut the can off immediately and remove the gauge from the system. Obviously, in this scenario, I can't hear it, see it or smell it, and hopefully we're going to cure the leak. You'll notice that the can starts to go cold, which this one is. Obviously you can't tell that on the video, and it also starts to feel empty. Once you're satisfied that the can is empty, simply screw the tap back down to shut the can off. Remove the gauge from the car, and then we're going to safely remove the can from the gauge by holding it away from us and slowly unwinding it, and just discard any remaining refrigerant.
We just used this vehicle to demonstrate our stop leak product, and so I know that in actual fact this vehicle is low on refrigerant and needs a regas. You wouldn't know that, so let's begin and take the readings. Start by zeroing the gauge, tighten the tap back down, reconnect and take a reading. As you can see, different scenario this time with the gauge just over 40. I'm going to make a mental note of that and start up the engine. So, air conditioning set to maximum, and I want the blowers on full, temperature on minimum. We can immediately see that the gauge has dropped to approximately 20. The difference between the prior reading with the engine off and the new reading with the engine on demonstrates to me that the compressor is working and that this vehicle needs a regas. So following on, it's time to regas. So we'll remove the hose from the vehicle with the engine still running, the air conditioning still set, all the same. We will unscrew the pin from the chamber all the way so that we don't accidentally prematurely pierce the can as we screw it on. So screw on like that, just smartly nip it up, reconnect the hose, and now we're going to regas. So we're aiming for the top of the blue with the aircon nice and cold at the same time. So we screw down the pin, which will pierce the can, then we invert, and we now undo the tap anti-clockwise and aim for the top of the blue. I can feel the can is beginning to go cold as the refrigerant is sucked into the vehicle, and you'll see the needle begin to rise. takes a couple of minutes, and I can really feel that can beginning to get cold now. And that looks excellent to me, so I'm going to lock off the can at that point. Now that the regas is done, I'm going to disconnect the hose from the vehicle. In the case where you have large quantity of refrigerant left, you can store this for next time. I'm going to securely hold the hose and discharge the can slowly away into atmosphere, like that. That's perfectly legal in the UK because of the chemical composition of this product.